carried out by British Aerospace in response to the growing competition in the world's airline business.
The 146 aircraft is a 100-seat jet passenger aeroplane, and it's our endeavour and our objective to make it a leading commodity in 100-seat market. There are worldwide competition for products of this sort. We've already established a market base with some 250 aeroplanes sold or on option. It's now the most successful British jet airliner ever made. And it's our endeavour to continue to spread that market base and to drive up the numbers in the world market.
Much of the production and assembly of the 146 takes place at British Aerospace's Hatfield site. The success and viability of the site depends upon British Aerospace sustaining their strategic advantage within the international marketplace. And recognising this, the management at Hatfield have introduced major changes which affect not just working practices, but the very structure of the organisation. This need to change is probably of more immediate importance to Hatfield than to other British Aerospace sites. Because in this particular case, sustaining strategic advantage doesn't rest solely with the external pressures of the world markets. They are having to face internal pressures rather closer to home.
You have to realise that British Aerospace at Hatfield is sitting on a site of some 800 acres of prime land on the northern outskirts of London, and anyone would know that that is worth rather a lot of money. The temptation to sell the site and develop that land is really quite strong. The management of Hatfield knew that if they wanted to be part of the moulding process of the strategy of British Aerospace at Hatfield, they would really need to recognise that they needed to change, and they needed to sell the need to change and restructure themselves, become much more profitable and much more competitive against this backdrop of the value of the land.
We recognised that we were into survival, and certainly we were not competing in the marketplace as we need to compete in the future. But furthermore, we recognised that we were not what we thought we were, one Hatfield business. We were indeed three types of business. One being supply, the components of manufacturing the nose fuse for the 146, components for the Airbus. We then recognised we had yet another business known as final assembly, which was about putting together the nose that we built together with other major components built either in Britain or across in the States. The third business was the fact that we needed to customise the finished stock standard aircraft to a customer spec. Now, we realised that we needed to drive the change that is so necessary to impact lead time, to impact quality, to drive down the inventory, to occupy less space in order that we can physically produce aeroplanes at a lower cost price and penetrate the market to the maximum effect.
We restructured the whole organisation quite fundamentally. We've tipped out the approaches to functional approaches to organisation and teamed functions into task-orientated groups, so that at all levels we're slowly installing the ability for people to actually see a task through completely from start to finish. They know where they pick up, they know where it ends off, and they have the total functionality there to deliver a result and continuously improve on that result.
The teamwork that needs to go on between us when we're facing what is a very tough challenge of change is paramount and so necessary. Now that's the base at my peer level, if you like. the organisation, there was, if you like, a concurrence to go ahead with the changes. It wasn't a radical yes, because what we were wishing to do was fairly radical to traditional British manufacturing thinking, but they didn't say no, and that was the green light to us to proceed with the programme that we're now embarked on in cellular manufacturing.
The first stage in the transition to cellular manufacturing was to set up a pilot cell. There were obviously going to be problems in implementing such a change, so before committing themselves to introducing the first cell proper, the pilot cell allowed both management and the shop floor to fully assess the benefits of the new approach.
The main implications within the pilot cell, which commenced at the latter part of '89, we believe was basically concerning the restructuring, the advantages of the pilot cell being put in place. There's certainly an involvement from the people concerned. They were able to determine the positioning of the fixtures and other equipment allied to the particular job. One of the concerns that was perhaps expressed by ourselves concerned the question of demarcations. We have reached an understanding with the company that if the company wished to pursue this line, then further negotiations will take place. But there is certainly some concern as to how that will develop.
Nobody likes change, do they? No individuals like change. But this has got to happen, okay? Change has got to come, you know? And I think most people enjoy it as well, you know. We've got closer cooperation all around between us and management team. I could go on from there, but we're only something new, and things have got to be learned even more so now, you know, from us and them.
Pilot cell experience gave us a lot of information, both in terms of layout, the environment in which we wanted to operate the new cells. We've now started to lay out and are commissioning our first cells proper, as it were, down in the Lowe's area.
What you can see is we've got the services complete in the area. We've got the electrics and the air in the floor, repainted the floor, done quite a lot of work in the roof. We've laid out new cranes, decoration of the roof. So basically the services and the area are complete.
This covers 2 or 3 cells now, though.
That's right, and as you can see, we've actually got our first jig in place.
So when will we be putting the first keel into jig then?
Yeah, the first keel will start building the jig on Friday of this week. And we've got an 8-day cycle on that afterwards. At the moment, we're just finishing up with some last-minute painting on the jig and preparations.
Good. All the people there, all briefed, their teams ready to go in?
Yeah, we've got the guys that are going to be on the shop on that jig all know that it's going to be Friday and all aware of that.
Cell leaders, support team?
Yeah, we know which cell leaders are running which cell.
Right.
What we mean by cells is an improved workflow and improved layout, but principally having a team of people together making a particular part of the aircraft, and in that team having everybody you need to support that particular product or that particular part of the aircraft. It is very different from the way we've organised it in the past, because we've broken down some of the functional boundaries. We've brought some of the support areas, the support staff, like inspectors, engineers, materials management people, actually into the cell team. So they're working much more as a team and are responsible to that team rather than in very large functional departments.
This new way of working meant that the skills and abilities required had to be redefined. In particular, the skills needed by the new cell leaders had to be identified. It was against such criteria that new people were selected.
Initially, we weren't sure about the kind of people we wanted. We knew that there were some characteristics associated with the cell leader job. And one of the most important characteristics was to do with a good deal of autonomy. That we knew there were less management, fewer management in the whole chain, so there was less managerial support. The systems that were going to be adopted would be much simpler. The individual cell leaders, rather than the foreman, would have much less formal authority. So the whole process would be characterised by a good deal of autonomy. And we knew that somehow or other that autonomy would need to be reflected in the managerial process. So we were looking for people who had a good deal of personal authority, whatever that was. Now, the difficulty really was how to capture that personal authority. So that's really, in summary, what we were looking for.
Yes, a person who feels they have to be in command and give orders would not find it comfortable within cellular management. Cellular management is very much hinged around discussion and meeting common agreement on the direction to go in. And if at any time a decision is required, it is required to make that decision in conjunction with agreement from everybody else.
Underpinning this whole change in working practice was a determination to drive cash out of the business. In other words, savings were needed to finance the development of the new cells, but the organisation also had to be financially leaner if it were to remain competitive. And with savings to be made, it was the inventory levels that immediately came under scrutiny.
When we began the inventory campaign, that was indeed the key to all that we're endeavouring to do at Hatfield, because we recognised we had an inventory level in excess of £400 million on the whole Hatfield site, and it was that we needed to drive down and drive out of our business. In so doing, we would enable cash to be put in the bank, earning interest which would pay for the major change that we find so necessary to make this site a world-class capability.
We just happen to call that cash-sensitive restructuring. And what you do is that you actually squeeze the business and you squeeze out all of those things that don't cry, like inventory and overhead cost, which can be very, very substantial. And then, having to manage the business in an environment which is hard to manage, you actually use that money that you've created to actually pay for the restructuring later on. Now, of course, a lot of people will say you don't actually really use the pound notes you've saved, because the pound notes you've saved will go into that year's profit and loss account. That is true. But what you really do put in the bank, very importantly, is that credibility and assuredness and the signals that you're sending in all directions that the management team can bring about and hack change.
I think people started to believe that something more was possible. People started to see the benefit, believe that the benefit of having a multifunction team at shop floor level could in fact give orders of change, and both in quality and in cost of sales. And people started to get very excited about that. And we felt very proud. And we reinforced our commitment really to move even harder and faster. So I think getting a few scores on the board are very important on change programs. Gives a lot of confidence and credibility to the team that's put their trust and a bit of career risk as well.
The reduced inventory levels made it easier for management to push the changes through. But of course it meant that within the cells, they had to learn to live without the comfort of well-stocked stores, and to work instead to a just-in-time system.
Well, that's where really our strategy has changed, our thinking has changed, because in the past our thinking was always that we needed buffer stocks to allow us contingency in case things went wrong. Now as we move towards just-in-time, in our thinking we've got a major emphasis on quality, right first time, which means that we can afford to have less stock in our stores here.
With this process we should be able to eliminate the wrong components and get them just in time. But you're talking about having one component. It's up to us, the operator and the cell leader and the engineers, to decide what level of stock we need on the shop floor or is adequate for us.
I don't like this just in time, one component part.
That's it.
One component part may not be correct. Then you've got to wait. The component part may be alright, and we fit it and we muck it up, and it's quite possible because the work is quite complicated. So just in time won't work. We've got to have at least 2 or 3 components on the move just in case things go wrong. The minimum stock is what we need.
The minimum stock, that's what we're coming to now and agreeing on. We'll have the stores, instead of being up there, a little island by itself, will be brought down on a shop, and then you can actually see what stock you got left. That's another important thing about being honest. If you make a mistake, tell your cell leader, tell your engineer, so we can put a scrap note or a reject and get a new one on order straight away. But that's the important bit. But we've got trust with the fitters and we trust them completely.
Ensuring